Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Wayfinding and Branding Committee to order. It is 11:50 a.m. and we do have a quorum present, just missing one member, Will Owens. First up, has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Anyone have any changes? All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, I'll go with Bob. And all in favor? Unanimous. Has everyone had a chance to review the previous minutes from the September 12th meeting? Does anyone have any changes? Can I get a motion to approve those minutes as presented? Christina? All's in favor? Unanimous. All right, guys, and we'll turn it over to you. Yeah, that's something I didn't think about. Can one of y'all run your presentation and one sit down so you can speak? We don't have a mic setup situation yet to pick it up. Good call, Joe.
Actually, if you could move that around more, I can see it. Uh-oh.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's that corner.
Okay, we're good. All right. Well, I am Aaron Arnett, and this is Sean Turpak, and we are with a company out of South Carolina called Arnett Mulberry Associates. And we're a city planning firm that does a number of things like master plans, economic development, comp plans, which aren't the most fun things in the world, quite frankly, and community identity. And that's what we're talking about here is branding. How do we create marketing tools for us to promote the Village of Marvin as a place, number one? Yeah, use yours because it might be my thing. And then secondly, how do we communicate to the people that live here about events, activities here at Village Hall, things that they need to know. So it's really about getting that message out about the community and telling that positive story about the place. Now, the way this project started is you all, as a village, were looking at doing a wayfinding program. And basically what wayfinding is, I know you're all familiar with it, but it's signs, direction signs that direct visitors and locals to the different destinations and civic locations that you have throughout the community. And I think you all were wise to begin the conversation about, okay, do we want to have the seal on our signs we're going to have here in the community, or do we want them to project a newer, fresher image and that marketing image that I talked about? And again, that's the brand. So really, this project is two projects in one. What I'd like to do with y'all here today is threefold. One, quickly go through a presentation very quickly about kind of what we're talking about and what some of the outcomes will be from this project. The second thing is we had a very well done, lots of participation community survey, which y'all probably participated in. I want to hit on some of the highlights of that particular survey. And then the last thing I want to do is just have a conversation with you all about questions that you all have about the process, as well as your thoughts about the character of the community. Y'all's role as a steering committee for us is really going to be the first level of creative guidance, and basically be our sounding board as we start coming up with some of these ideas, giving us input, and then also helping us with some of the technical questions that we may have about wayfinding and signage and what we want to make sure is included in the system, as well as locations and signs and all of that. So. But before we get started with that, if you wouldn't mind if we could just go around the room, and if you could tell us your first name and then whatever hats you wear in the community, and then give me one word that best describes what you cherish most about Martin. So,
just a reminder to turn your mics on when you speak.
Okay. So we'll start right here.
Now you want me to participate?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Kim Vandenberg, Mayor Pro Tem. What was the one word thing?
One word that best describes what you cherish most about Marvin.
Community.
Melinda Nielsen. I would say schools.
Schools.
Christina Culp, on the Parks and Rec Board. I'm the president of MARSH, which is the North Carolina Wildlife Federation chapter in this zip code. I'm a master gardener and also part of a group called Wild Ones, which promotes landscaping of native plants in yards.
Awesome.
I think I'm the vice president of that one. And the word is trees.
Trees.
Trees. So you'll be able to find my survey results now because I think I said trees 1,000 times
I do remember that in the survey. So
with exclamation point.
I'm Bob Nunnenkamp. I sit on the Park Rec and Greenway Committee, started an organization called Marsh that Christina is now president of. The word that comes to me is pastoral.
pastoral.
Derek Durst. I work for the Village of Marvin, but I'm also a resident. And the word that comes to mind is tranquility.
So I'm Austin Yao. I'm the clerk and the assistant to the manager here at the village. When I think of Marvin, the word that comes to mind is green.
Freeing.
Green.
Green.
Mhm.
A lot of these have a similar theme to them for sure.
Hi, my name is Jill. I am on village staff, and when I think of one word, it's probably quaint.
Quaint. You know, it's interesting too, because, and you'll see this in a second. I mean, we know this area generally, even though it's the first time we've, excuse me, worked in Marvin, but we've worked in a lot of the communities around here. And obviously you all have experienced the similar kind of growth and change of pace that many of your neighbors have felt. And, but those are the words that you all, I mean, as we're driving around, what y'all shared is definitely some of the things that we've observed ourselves, you know, whether it be being in Eford Park or whether it be coming over here in the historic district and taking some pictures of some of the older buildings. I mean, you definitely do get that quaint character. You get that green pastoral feel here in an area that, I mean, is entirely urban, you know, the greater Charlotte area. So anyway, what I want to do now is, oh, sorry. Name, hats you wear, and one word that best describes what you cherish most about Marvin. One word? One. You can use two. There's always one in every group, so.
I've met Will Owens, planning board, 18-year resident of Marvin. Way back when I'm getting back from Florida, week vacation. I'm so sorry about that. Basically, my two word is not waxing.
We were joking. I shouldn't say this. Actually, I won't say that. But we were joking about that earlier today. Okay, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we're doing real quickly. The first slide's about our company, and I'm not going to go into the details about that, other than to say the next slide, I mentioned all the things that we do. We're a small company of 5 people. We've done this 600 times, more than 600 times across the country and in 5 countries and 42 states. We've done about 48 brands in North Carolina. Right now, we're actually wrapping one up in on the other side of the state. We'll be there on Thursday, sort of near Raleigh in Zebulon. The next slide shows just some of the ones that we've done in North Carolina. I think closest to you all, Indian Trail is up there. Stylings should be up there twice, actually, because we have both their seal and their marketing logo. Actually, it's not up there, but from one side of the state to the other, we've gone through this exercise here. So brand identity, that's the first piece that we're going to look at, because again, we can't really design the look of the signs until we know what identity is going to be on those. So our objectives when we go into branding and marketing, even though I just showed you a slide with a bunch of logos on it, it's not about just creating a singular logo. It's about creating a system. And what we want to do is be able to tell the story of Marvin and what makes it special. So we want to connect all those positive attributes about the place, the things that you all love, the assets that you have here in the community, the people that you have here in the community, the interactions that you have here in the community, and stitch together again a positive narrative that is relevant to people who might be passing through or that are visitors from outside the area. Definitely things that we can use to help communicate that this is a great place to invest if we're looking at trying to, attract new business. Some communities, that's not a priority of theirs. Others, it certainly is, but that needs to be something we'd be able to use this to help us with those types of messages. And then I alluded to it before, is it's got to be something that can kind of gel the community and help build local pride. I think, quite frankly, in a community, any community is important, but I think in a community like Marvin, creating something that's going to resonate with the people here and make them be able to connect to these wonderful things that you all have is one of our most important things here. And then ultimately, it's going to be an entire package that starts from that logo to the next slide shows that, there'll be what we call a brand narrative. There'll be the logo itself and all the different graphic elements to that. And then there'll be a ton of different brand extensions and marketing collateral that'll come out of that. So I'm not going to read this next slide, which is a brand statement, but I'll tell you what it is it will be, again, a kind of an elevator speech about Marvin and what you all share with us over the next few days, what you love about the place. And it'll be the platform about this is the story that we want to tell. But also there's going to be layers to it, which will start to build what that graphic will be and what those different elements of our community happen to be. This is for Stanton, Virginia. The next slide, this slide shows the logo for Stanton, Virginia. And if I had read the brand statement, you would have seen the things that kind of came out in this graphic. This is a very historic community, but this graphic is pretty contemporary because the values of that place, and again, every community is different, but the values of that place led us to something that was very contemporary. First thing is in Virginia, they can't pronounce the actual town names like they're spelled. So most people would say Staunton if they've never heard of the place, but it's actually pronounced Stanton. And we know we're not going to get people to say it right the first time they see it, but by highlighting that U in there and Stanton gets our foot in the door to be able to tell that story. The next thing is a very historic community. They've got all this great, wonderful Victorian architecture there. So that iconic crown above the U really highlights that. They're known as the Queen City of the Shenandoah. And the last two things go with the tagline. They have the Great American Shakespeare Company there that brings in over 100,000 people into their downtown every year. It's massive anchor to their community. So As You Like It certainly is one of his more famous plays, but more importantly, it's your experience. You create your own experience in Stanton. Whether you're a business owner, whether you're a visitor, whether you're a resident, there's all these different layers to your quality of life there. So Stanton, As You Like It. So when we go from the brand itself to what we call brand extensions, we take those graphic elements of that initial logo, and then we apply them to other things that exist in the community. So it might be the city of Stanton. Again, that previous one was a marketing logo for the community, but you can see there on the upper left, we simply applied colors and typeface to their existing town seal that they had there. They have a really nice town seal. Sometimes we redesign town seals. We're doing that in Zebulon right now. Other times we don't because they're either good or they're sacred, and we should. But even in those cases, we can tie them into the system. We connect them to the system. But other things like their organizations, like their downtown development organization, like their arts district and arts council that they have there. And when you see these logos side by side, you can tell they're all different, but they're all part of that same family, and they actually build brand equity in each other. Here's a similar one in North Carolina that we did. It's a lot different style. It's Graham County, North Carolina, in the far west corner of the state. Most of their land there is actually government land owned by the federal government. They've got a lot of national forests and historic sites and all that. So the overall theme of that really was designed to look a little bit like the 40s and 50s era WPA posters that you would see. And again, you can see how these, through that extension from the communities like Fontana Dam and Robbinsville to the different events that they have, it's all unique, but it's all part of the same system. Then we look at applying the brand to the different things. And a lot of the things we do in every community, but there's usually some specific things that the individual communities need that we work out for them. And I don't know what those are right now here in Marvin, but what we often see are things like trying to highlight the arts. This is a brochure concept in Newberry, South Carolina. The next one is brochure covers that we design. Now, for things like this, we're not going to come in and redesign a brochure or develop a brochure. But what we would do is design covers for, existing tools that you all have that really kind of tie into the system. This is Smith River Small Towns over near Martinsville, and it was all about textile heritage there in that community. Next slide, we'll look at marketing collateral. Let's let our citizens or people that come here into our community and have a great time wear a t-shirt that has our logo on it, or have a water bottle, or this was Southwest Virginia. This is a regional brand that we did, and it was all about the outdoors, and cycling was a big thing there. So we applied it to a cycling jersey. You can put it in environmental graphics. Hendersonville, on the other side of the state, west side of the state, probably more so than anybody where we've worked, have taken the icon, the H icon from the logo that we designed for them, and put it everywhere. Hard to see, but they've got a beautiful gateway sign, stone gateway sign there with the H in the upper left. To tree grates, they've put it in the lower left. To their street furniture, you can see right there, right in downtown. To their wayfinding, and even on the bottom of that clock that they have in downtown. So there's a lot that you can do with the logo, especially if it has a unique icon for it that you can apply everywhere. Then we also do ads. This is Travelers Rest, which is northern part of our county in Greenville, South Carolina. The Travelers Rest is an incredible little town. And they always position themselves as the gateway to Hendersonville and Asheville and, Western North Carolina, but they really truly are where your adventure begins. They're really the base camp for it. And we work with them to kind of change their mindset that we're not a place you pass through, we're a place you come to and your adventure begins. So the graphic that we designed there, it was all about activity and outdoor recreation. Lower left, you see that's intentionally first two things to look, it's intended, TR. Everybody in upstate South Carolina calls them TR. They don't call them Travelers Rest. They call them TR. No, we're not going to, those are the people we're reaching out to. We're not going to get them to say it how we want them to say it. So let's celebrate that. And then the other thing is the lowercase letters there, and being an active outdoor recreation focused brand. It's about, that looks like the periodic table of the elements. So that tagline was get into your element. But the other thing was, from a base camp standpoint, is it starts with TR. Whether you're going on the trails that they have around there, whether you're going on a trip, whether you're traveling through, whether you're, trek, it starts with the TR. And this was a regional ad campaign that they did. Again, all part of a very simple, all there's on here is pictures and a tagline. That is it, and a logo, but it's pretty powerful. And then the next one, this is a similar one, beginning of a system, also outdoor recreation based in Norton, Virginia, kind of similar to the TR one. Their tagline is get outside in Norton, because it's all about outdoor recreation. Next one is Clinton, North Carolina, and you can see how. Mhm. Yeah. It is. It's actually the wood booger. His name is the wood booger, evidently in there. But one of the interesting thing is, and we'll show you this later, that is a big draw. That story is a big draw there. And Sean designed a little Easter egg inside the logo, the main logo of this, that has the foot of the Bigfoot, the wood booger. So yeah, we were working in Troy, and evidently that Sasquatch there, or Bigfoot there, loves Zagnut candy bars. You may know that.
I'm quite familiar with
Yeah,
that.
so that's their story. So I think we had an ad. Yeah. So yes, so the next one's Clinton, North Carolina. It looks their millstone they have downtown is the graphic that's there, but you can see how we did redesign their seal, that marketing logo, but you can put it on vehicle graphics as well. And then actually speaking of Troy, one of the things that, no, you're right, Sean. One of the things that we like to do to communicate this thing about logos, town seals and logos, we try to use the analogy of a university. Universities will have that official academic identity, so like at UNC, it'll be the well. Appalachian, it's more of a word type that they have there. So that represents the official functions of academia at the university. Then they have the athletic logo, which really, that's the thing that people wear on their t-shirts. And, you have the Mountaineers for Appalachian, you've got the Tar Heels for, yeah, Yusuf. Exactly. When you look at them together, they share some similar design characteristics, mainly colors and typeface, but they are different in design because they are very intentional in the message they're trying to communicate. We do the same thing with communities. The next one actually shows Troy, by the way. Official town seal, and then the marketing logo there with Set Your Course, and you can see how they work together. We don't always do this. It is something that we usually feel is important for us to do. Excuse me. But at the very least, we want to highlight that connectivity between those messages. And then I think finally is the process. And I'll just say, I'm not going to go through all of this, but today and tomorrow, we're going to be having several roundtable groups like this. We have a public meeting here tonight. Each one of these meetings, we're going to have conversations about the community. If you do wear a different hat and you come to one of these other meetings, there might be a few similar questions, but we do have questions geared specifically to that themed focus groups. So we're meeting with staff, property owners, boards and commissions, and who else?
Yeah, staff is at 2, advisory boards are at 3:30, property owners at 5, public input meetings at 6:30, and then council's tomorrow morning at 9.
And then after that, tomorrow about midday, we're going to transition into production. And we're going to work all throughout the day and night, and we're going to build as much of a system as we can. You'll see when we present it back to you all on Wednesday at what time?
4.
Right back here. We'll have a lot on there, a lot of stuff that I've shown you, but we'll also have a punch list. We try to not focus on a singular design. Or multiple designs. We try to go with a singular design first and then build out the system. But then we look to you all to say, okay, are we on the right path? Sorry, I'm talking. So anyway, just go through into the wayfinding slide, Sean. So wayfinding gets a lot technical, and we're not really going to go into that today, but you're going to see a lot of that as we go through it. But Sean and I have to work on the destinations themselves. Where are we sending people to? We will actually rank those and do a hierarchy of destinations, because not every destination is going to have a sign to it. Certainly Eford Park is going to have a sign to it. People want to go there. But you might have, say, a historic building that is part of the character of your community. It's an asset, but it may not necessarily have a wayfinding sign to it. It certainly potentially could have a monument sign to it that comes into the system. So we have to figure out all of that. We also have to figure out the routes that people will take to get to these locations, and then ultimately we're going to map. I'm going to get you to. Oh. Sorry.
So as Aaron was saying, once we get the destinations and figure out the traffic patterns, we'll be looking to you all for input on, what the typical patterns are, but also DOT data as far as where the traffic is going. Depends on, from community to community, things vary dramatically, but often, locals will know the way around a community, and we want to, through wayfinding, curate the visitor experience. So there might be certain things we want to direct more of our traffic by. So we will, we'll put signs in strategic places so that we're curating that experience more so than just necessarily finding the quickest bypass around some of our other assets to a destination. So yeah, we'll look at the sign locations, and then, the sign designs and specifications will come a little later down. Once the branding has been established, we'll be able to work on the wayfinding signs themselves. And as Aaron's moving through the presentation here, those signs, we'll start with looking at our gateway signs, and you already have, one nice monument sign out at the Publix shopping plaza, but looking at other potential locations, whether they're monumental signs or even more simplified pole-mounted signs. And then we'll look at the directional trailblazers, and we typically have two sizes: a large scale for higher speed traffic, 35 miles an hour and above, or the smaller scale when it is below 35 miles an hour. And here's just some examples of other projects. And also bannering strategy, which can help act as a sense of arrival for different ingress points to the community, but also traffic calming in certain areas too. When people see a corridor of color as they enter, it can really help them feel that sense of place and slow down traffic.
A lot of people don't necessarily think of banners being part of a wayfinding system, but they really do allow you to create some unique gateways throughout your community and really highlight specific character districts. Like you could have unique banners, different colors in your historic district versus where you may have on some of your other corridors. So those are the things that we'll do. There's also some specialty signage like parking signage that's always important in a system. You are very different than some of the other places where we work. So I don't know how those specialty signs will work out, but ultimately,
As you move forward with this, one of the things that our neighborhood was looking at doing with Marvin was having street signs that would have the road sign, but it will also have the Village of Marvin. And as you're designing these logos or the wording or however you go about that, I'd like to see it transferable or done in such a way that we could use whatever we come up with collectively to take it into our neighborhood.
great idea. Great idea.
Well, the street sign where it says Wyndham Hall, would be an adjacent flag that might promote Marvin in some way or whatever we're doing to reinforce it.
And
I hear-
especially with the footprint of Marvin, that might be important. So when you're in. Marvin.
Absolutely.
And Bob, we have started replacing street signs, the green street blades, that have the village seal on them.
Yeah.
We've paused that for now just until we finish this project.
Well, that's what I was.
Yes.
Okay.
So then we'll decide from there if we want to just go ahead and get all these streets on that same.
And that's really a great idea. And as you mentioned, well, am I in Weddington? Am I in Wesley Chapel? Am I in Waxhaw? Am I in Marvin? A lot of people will probably, even when they pay their taxes to the Village of Marvin, they may not know exactly where they happen to be.
They don't.
That's those sign toppers like that, or those graphics on the side of the street signs, are one way to do it. Sign toppers, which would be something over the top of the street sign, or another way to do it. Obviously, that's a little bit more expensive, and there might even be something to do on the side of those. And I think that's one of the things that you were just mentioning, to where we could highlight.
There's a neighborhood in Charlotte, Kingswood, and their signs are flagged almost as almost a 90-degree angle. And it promotes their neighborhood, but at the same time tells you what street you're on.
All right. So,
Oh, well, make sure your mic is on if it's not. Just make sure. Okay, you're good. If it's green, you're good.
Oh, okay. It was dull green.
You're good.
It's bright green. But there's a lot of different areas that jut in and jut out of Marvin. So if you're like going to, this suggests some signage that's bringing people to Marvin Heritage District, when you've got an area right next to it, Providence Downs, it's not even in Marvin.
Yeah.
So if there's some way that can be distinguished a little bit more of where those areas are, I think that's going to be important too.
I think that's one way where banners can really be helpful. You know, a unique situation that many cities actually in North Carolina have. We had a conversation about the history of annexation in North Carolina last time we were here. I used to have to wear that hat when I
Very
worked in
thorough.
Salisbury. You know, from a gateway standpoint, I think what we need to do is find the main gateways in the community, because you are going to come in and out and in and out and in and out. And we don't want to create clutter, but we also do want to highlight, hey, Eford Park, it's surrounded by not Marvin, but it's in obviously the village of Marvin. It's one of our little satellite annexation areas. So we need to make sure, particularly that area that has probably one of your best anchors destinations in the village, have a way to highlight that and say, no, you're not in Wesley Chapel or Waxhaw, you're in Marvin. So that was quick and dirty, believe it or not. I was trying to go fast until I had the coughing fit, of what we're going to do here. Do y'all have any questions about that before we go into the survey and what some of the things that we heard?
Oh, and can you send me a copy of these results? I know people online want to read
I'll
this.
email it to you as soon as we're done with this meeting.
Sounds good.
So this is the brand survey itself. We did it online. We had it up for 2 months mainly, September, October, not quite a full 2 months. We had 358 people do the survey. That's really awesome. And that's a testament to you all pushing that out, by the way. I really appreciate that because it's given us some great input, but also people's want to say what they like about, the town. So, so really that's what it was. I mean, it'll be the same kind of conversation that we will be having over the next couple of days, all about the character and the identity and the perceptions of Marvin. So most of the people, this shows the neighborhoods where they came from. 96, this is exactly what we want. 96% of the people came from the primary zip code. And then you can see, actually, let me look here because I don't have to look over. Most came from Marvin Creek, then Weddington Chase, and then Firethorn, and you can kind of see how it goes from there. One of the things that's interesting, and as I look on this, I see 2 or 3, not to get ahead of things, but when we did this project in Stallings, when we did this project in Indian Trail, when we've done this project in other communities that are similar to you all in these growth areas, people tend to connect more to the neighborhood that they live in than they do the community. Or it was mentioned schools earlier. That's that anchor to the community that people gravitate towards too. Particularly in a growing suburban area, that's the case. People may have located in Charlotte because they found a great job here. And then they may have found where they wanted to live based off of the amenities that community had or taxes, what have you. So they are more connected to the urban area and their neighborhood than they are to the community. One of my observations the last time we were here, and like I said, you see it a few times on here, several of your destinations and neighborhood actually have Marvin in the name. And that seems kind of simple, like Marvin Creek and like Marvin Estates. And I know there's others that are out there. It sounds simple, but that tells me that there's already this understanding that Marvin is our community. It's not just, well, I live in Weddington Chase. Okay, where's that? Well, it's kind of south of Charlotte and Union County, that sort of thing. It's in Marvin.
Also the fact that Weddington Chase has the name Weddington and it's in Marvin, which is interesting too.
I don't know that this will matter to your data, but I think Farms of Meadowlark and Meadowlark are the same neighborhood
Got it.
because that's mine. And we don't seem to even know the name of our neighborhood, if that tells you
Pretty
anything.
sure that this, people just, we didn't know that, but people were just basically listing off the names of
Yeah.
the neighborhoods.
What's there interesting though, is there are only 20 homes down there and we've got 11 people, so rah, rah us.
Awesome.
Did you segment out the neighborhoods that were in Marvin and not in Marvin?
We didn't, but I mean, we certainly could.
I mean, you got Gates of Ainsley, that's not in
Well, and
Marvin.
that's something, and I don't know about the neighborhood standpoint because I don't know the layout of your community quite well, but one of the things that's interesting or important, the assets that you all have in a community don't serve the people that solely live within your boundaries. There's probably people that come to the community garden at Eford Park.
Check their ID at the door.
Right. And the same thing for events that you all have. So I would say that the cool thing about this, whether that neighborhood is in or outside of the town limits, the village limits, the fact that they took the time to do the survey says, this is my community. This is who I feel connected to. We may be Weddington Chase, but Marvin is my place. So then we asked, and I'm going to skip over some of these. We asked, who were you? And, why are you doing this to me? Most people live in the village limit. Some people work in it, and, most. That happens a lot when you look at the key employers, the government entities, even in bigger towns, tend to be up there in the top 10 of employers. Perceptions of Marvin, these are ranked. Most people felt like things that scored the highest were it's a great place to live. We have great trails and parks and open space. And then the things that ranked lower, not saying that they were bad, but were things like have great arts and cultural resources, has great opportunities for shopping and dining. That's not surprising that would be there because there's not a whole lot of that there. Important question that we ask is how positive of an image do you think people in the regions that don't live in Marvin have about your community? 64% had either a very positive, it felt like the outsiders had either a very positive or somewhat positive perception. That's good. A lot of times we work in communities where people don't have a good perception of that place. We're working in a community right now outside of Roanoke that has this one business, and I won't go into details on it, that everybody outside of the community knows about. That's the only thing they know about that place. And that particular business is not a very good anchor business. It's not what you want to be known for, regardless of whether you patronize that business or not. So here, everybody thinks positively. Even the ones that think neutral, that's okay, because when we're starting to build the story, if they don't know much about your place, that's cool, because we don't have to overcome that negative perception about the place.
For the negative or the somewhat negative, did they tell you why it was negative? Like specifically?
Usually it was, you could see some of the comments that came out. I can go back and look at it. Good school, good reason why people like it, good schools, the rural character, location, proximity to other places. People don't know where it is. You see all that. Exclusivity came up. I have to go back into it and look to see what the negatives are. But here's a good example of what I'm talking about here. And this is an extreme example, okay? We did this similar project in Stone Mountain Village, Georgia, several years ago, many years ago. And you're shaking your head. I grew up in, here's the thing, is I grew up in Georgia, in South Georgia, and lived there my whole life until I went to college. And I didn't know where Stone Mountain Village was. I knew Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain's this big giant park with a big stone mountain in it that that over, it's the largest attended state park in the entire state by far. This is big positive image. And then the other thing is we all know that there's the carving on the mountain. Stone Mountain was the location of the reconstitution of the KKK in 1915. And even to the point to where Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech calls out Stone Mountain in the speech. So you've got this big negative perception of Stone Mountain. You've got this big positive perception of Stone Mountain. All of those overwhelm the fact that there's an actual municipality right there in the shadow of the mountain that people that grew up in Georgia didn't even know existed. So that's a situation where those perceptions are really important for us to understand, because sometimes we have to overcome those perceptions, sometimes even if it's a big positive perception. So this was an interesting one. We asked people words or phrases that best describe the character and personality of Marvin. So this was kind of like the first question I asked you all, and you can see schools, quiet, rural, peaceful, friendly, quaint. Some of the words that we've used already today are there. We asked, and this is a question I'll ask tonight at the public meeting. So if I won't use postcard, I'll say an Instagram post. So it tells you how long we've been doing this. Our language should change. But if you were to design a postcard for Marvin, well, what image would you use that best describes the personality of the community? So Horse Farm was mentioned, Eford Park, and the barn there, which is a really cool building. The open space and open fields, rural setting, Village Hall. This is a great facility that you all have here. We ask about, these questions sounds like we're getting y'all to do the work for us, and we're not, but we're also not ashamed to use to use a good idea if somebody comes up with something. But if you were redesigning a welcome to Marvin sign at the village limits, what phrase or tagline would you use on it? And this is just a sampling of it. A little bit of heaven in horse country, community that cares, Charlotte's rural oasis. I like that one. I like the idea behind that one. And again, that goes back to after we were talking about our one words, telling you my observation about this place and the fact that you are wholly within an urban area, but you really do feel like you're a little bit off the beaten path, even if you can't turn left on the road because there's so much traffic. You still get that feel. So I really like that one. The retreat is really cool. Marvelously Marvin. Now that might be a mouthful for me, but whoever did that was really thinking creatively there. Specific places or destination businesses would you recommend for a person visiting for the first time? Eford Park, Marvin Eford Park. Do people call it Marvin Eford Park, or do they call it Eford Park? Okay. It's a park. Biggest misconception about Marvin. This is another one of those kind of outsider perception questions, is that people are pretentious and snobby. The very first word that came up earlier was community, I think. And that's, if you say the community, you're talking about the people. You're talking about people's connectivity to each other. You're not talking about people that are snobby and pretentious.
I'm surprised gated is not up there.
Part of Waxhaw, that's interesting because the zip code is a Waxhaw zip code, right? So.
Well, and sometimes our mailing address is back to get things
Yeah. And that's tough. That's tough to build an identity. It really is. We've seen other places like Granite Quarry, North Carolina is in Salisbury's zip code, but it's an old historic town and they don't even have Granite Quarry on their post office. So
I think somebody should count the number of horses in Marvin. I'm not joking, because I don't think there's nearly as many as we'd like to believe there are.
which is what
My neighborhood's one of the
somebody
few that still has a few.
So when I see these responses, it makes me wonder how involved they are, what they actually know about Marvin.
It's a misconception.
Well, that's
And that's,
true.
yeah, this is asking folks that live here what they think
Yeah.
outsiders
Yeah,
think.
that's
of
true.
No, I think
No.
this is,
No, you're right.
I think this is dead on the misconception list, but I
Yeah.
would add gated to his, to the
Where
list.
everyone is rich. Well, I'm not. So.
Just to remember to have your mics on.
It always matters. That's on the record.
Full of
Your opinion always
Well,
matters.
that's why I want to count them. Can we count the horses?
wanna
I'm
do
not
a
joking.
census?
I want to assess the
Horse count.
horseness. A horse
A
census.
census on
I'm not
horses,
joking.
yeah.
We only have 12 horses in all of Oregon. Whatever it is, it's more than that.
There's a lot more than you think.
And you
I'm-
look,
I'm
curious,
you see them
how
when you're,
how can you battle the snobby? I mean, what's your idea about,
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
I know. I mean,
We get
that's
paid.
something that really
big bucks, I'm
me.
not sure about, but you're right. I mean, it's things like that. You have, first of all, we sometimes we do look kind of like, I mean, this sounds weird, but we look like we've come in and really kind of saved the day with community sometimes because they've never done it. They've never done branding. They've never put together a message. So a lot of that is overcome simply by being, having a consistent message that goes out there. The other thing is to promote your positive interaction that you have in the community, whether it be an event at the park or what have you, those are whether it be a neighborhood block party that's not sponsored by the town, but, or the village, but, maybe that's something that needs to be part of our message and our communication that we have. I don't know what all the answers are right now, but getting the positive out over nothing, which is where most places are when they bring us into town, helps you overcome those things.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that because I probably put the biggest misconception was this. I probably put some of those down. I work in Union County, the rest of Union County, a lot. And that is exactly what they think of this area. Sometimes I don't even tell them where I live because I'll say Waxhaw just to keep the snobby down. But I think if we could appear more welcoming, that would help our that problem. That would help that problem some, that we appear more welcoming, where we invite people from other areas, which we did for Marvin Day, and we're doing for the trick or treat thing we're doing on Friday, all of that. We're trying to be more welcoming to
Right.
everybody.
I think it would be safe to say this part of Union County, generally speaking, a lot of that would apply to.
Agreed, 100%.
Union County is a very divided county. This particular section has great schools, wealth.
Yeah.
And the southern part of the county is very much the opposite.
Right.
It's west
Would
and
you
east.
not agree
It's
with
west
that?
and east. Yeah, the eastern,
Yeah.
eastern 2/3 probably is much more rural too. So, I mean, it is a very different place. But it's something to consider.
No.
This was one that I think confused people, thinking that this was much more than just a branding and marketing project. But again, if we're trying to, if a purpose of this wanted to give us some tools to where we might want to recruit that, let's say, small independent restaurant that we'd love to have here on a corner somewhere. Not necessarily, we're not talking about Walmarts or anything of the world, but we did ask people are some of the things that are needed in the community. Obviously, none came up quite a bit. Additional parks and events, restaurants, and you can see the others. A lot of them are community-based things like library, like community building activities, like farmers market, and then some of those businesses that also generate activity, like a pub and a coffee shop and those sorts of things. So I'm gonna skip that one just because I could talk about this all day long. We'll talk about, I'm gonna skip this one, but we do
But you will
ask,
share these with us?
yes,
Okay.
the whole thing and the raw data too. But we do ask who you compete with in the region and why. When we say compete with, again, this goes back to the perception, how is Weddington and Waxhaw different from you? What is their story? How do you fit into that larger story? What makes you unique? So that's the intent of these questions. Again, what distinguishes Marvin from these your peer communities? And it goes back to some of the things we talked about before. More rural setting, limited commercial development, great schools, Then, of course, larger residential lots, you can see what we're talking about there. And then I think this is an important question too. Do you think Marvin identity is clearly communicated to locals and visitors? And that's basically saying, hey, where are we right now with this branding project? And, just over 2/3 felt, we're not presenting ourselves at all right now. Again, that's why we're here, right? So.
That's comforting.
And then this is important for us when we're putting together some strategies. How do people hear about things in the community? Most people said the Village of Marvin website, which is interesting. I say it's interesting because that's never up there at the top, ever. Social media is always up there at the top. So the fact that 55% of the people that did this are getting their information from the website, and of course they could click on multiple things here. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever seen the website for the community. It may have been second or third. Normally it's middle to lower.
I suddenly have the urge to go dedicate some more time to the website.
Well, people are going to it, they see it as a resource. And that's a good thing. So that's cool. So you see those methods of communication there in the community. It's interesting. I have looked at it before, but I forget. The demographics of a community can change the way this question is answered in other places. I mean, rarely do you see newspaper. I mean, newspapers are pretty much dead now. But if we work in a real rural place, say in Southwest Virginia, newspaper is going to be higher up on the list. And TV and radio will be up there. If we work in somewhere that's really, usually it's the case anywhere, but if we work in somewhere that's a lot younger and more of a dynamic place, social media is by far and away the main way people hear about things. So. And of course, that could be the town social media. It could be a local business's social media. It could be their friend's social media as well. That's how they hear about stuff.
I got a question about something. Is it on? Yeah, it's on. The magazine. I know about a lot of the different areas of Charlotte. I mean, I've been in real estate for 32 years, so magazines for different areas are real big. Valentine, South Park, Lake Norman, all that stuff. Are you able to try to help bring in maybe a Marvin magazine?
That's not really something that we do.
Well, right, but do you have the contact of those who do it? Because a lot of it's based on, of course, a lot of it's based on advertising.
Yeah.
But there are different ones in areas that do.
There is a local magazine that we sometimes partner with. We haven't done it lately. There's a local, it's mainly focused towards kids and sports, but it's like I think it's Marvin Waxhaw Sports or something like that.
Yeah.
They usually will give us a free article every once in a while. And honestly, I just haven't taken them up on that in a while.
Okay.
But that's definitely something we can start doing more because it is a free publication. It ends up in people's mailboxes throughout Marvin and Waxhaw.
Well, the big thing is the real estate. And obviously that pays for a lot of advertising and magazines.
Right.
And this area has got a lot of, high dollar real estate. So that was just an idea I had.
Let us think about that. Interestingly, Sean, before he started working for us, when he's been working with us for years now, that's what he did. He worked for some of those regional real estate magazines. And so, yeah. But same thing about messaging. We ask, okay, how could we get the word out better in the community, increase social media? Branded Wayfinding came up, which is good. Hey, that's why one of the things that we're doing here, enhance presence on regional websites, which is kind of in a different way what you're asking there. How can we, maybe it's we asked, and this is the first thing that comes to my mind. And I know it's not necessarily relevant here, but I know there's this regional trails network called the Carolina Thread Trail Network, which I don't think y'all have any trails on right now. But if there's something out there that's relevant to you all, hey, let's use that. Let's try to get our foot in the door on that website with that particular partner to help share the story about Marvin. So, and again, we don't need to go through all of these, but you can just kind of see the depth. In fact, that's the last question that we had on the survey. And like I mentioned, I'm going to email you when we're done with this meeting, this presentation and the raw data, because with 368 people doing this, there's a ton of information in that raw data in there, which is pretty interesting and pretty telling too. So that's what we wanted to share. And I know we went through it very quickly, but now what I'd like to do with the rest of our time is maybe ask you all some questions and have a conversation about needs, about messaging, about the character of the community. And I have some very general questions here, but let's just kind of see where the conversation takes us. Let's step back for a second. I think we've talked about this, about being welcoming and inviting people in here and maybe connecting to either some of those outside messaging resources or maybe even looking to find ways to create things that could work here, like a magazine here. You all as our steering committee, let's kind of think strategically. You've seen what we've done in other places. We've had a big conversation about the survey and all of that. So I think you probably understand completely what can come out of this. All that being said, what are some things that you want to make sure we get out of this? What would you say are some of your broad goals or outcomes that you'd like to see? You know, if we do anything here as part of this project, we need to do this. We need to project ourselves as a more welcoming community. We need this specific deliverable as part of this process.
Let me collect my thought here. You know, we're talking about marketing to the general population, I think, but when I think through it, one of the things we face as a community here, complacency is not the right word, but when we're looking for volunteers, as an example, it's a devil of a time getting people to volunteer in Marvin. You know, I think everybody would agree with that. So as we talk about this and the deliverables, it's not how do we just engage people outside of Marvin and educate people as to what Marvin is. But I think as importantly, we educate people in Marvin what Marvin is, and we somehow get them to engage more with both the council at the you know, we have the coffee with the council. I don't know what the turnout is, but I'd be surprised if it's a lot. We have several volunteer organizations in Marvin, and I think it's fair to say it's very difficult to get people to participate in that. So as you do this, I'd really like you to think through, how do we engage Marvin?
And how do we get increase engagement?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. And when you say re-educate people in Marvin, what Marvin is, get people engaged. I would venture to say a community like yours, because you probably do have a lot of people that commute out every day, spend most of their time, and maybe when they're home, I have kids that are teenagers, young teenagers, and you know, when I'm home, I'm spending most of my time running around the soccer and volleyball and all that sort of stuff, and it's hard for me to be engaged because of the character of and dynamics of my life and also the community. That in a place like Marvin is as important, if not probably more important, that internal messaging, communicating to the people that live here versus that external message about, hey, you all, you think we're a bunch of horses and we only have 12 horses. More important than that is for us to communicate to the people that are here.
You're going to be famous.
Also, can you communicate to the ones who have their kids out of the house and, you know, grown, and they want to downsize and stay in Marvin in their semi-retirement years? That's another faction that's out there. You got the young ones, you got the old ones. I'm approaching the old ones, but that's what.
If he's old.
What? Oh,
But our community
sit down.
only
Really?
good for our volunteers. And that's why our schools are so good, is because we have wonderful volunteers in our school. So the community is the same way. Our community is only as good as our volunteers.
I agree.
That's true.
Who does the best job of building their volunteer base? You just mentioned the schools. Are there any other organizations or activities or anything like that that you would say, you know what, they do, this is somebody we could look to, does a really good job of it? I mean, my next question would be, well, why? You know, schools, I would think it's kind of cooked into the fact that those are your children. And if you have time, you want to help them and help the school and all of that. Any other thoughts about any other things that around here that does a good, and there might not be, that's,
In Marvin?
yeah.
And he's moved out of the room.
So y'all's median age here is 42.
That's young.
It's younger than I would have thought because of the affluence here in this community. I would have thought it would have been pushing upper 40s. I'm working in a town and I've never seen this before. It's a super high-end neighborhood that ultimately got massive and it's now 10,000 people and they incorporated, but it started as a development. It's in Loudoun County, Tennessee, outside of Knoxville. Their median age is 71. I've never seen that before. So anyway.
And there's 10,000 of them.
Yeah. What you talk about when your comment about, hey, we want to be able to communicate to people that live here and have their kids outside the house is that, hey, you can downsize here. We still want you to stay here and be part of the community. That's
You say that again?
When the parents have kids grow up, they go to college, they finish college, parents downsize in home, and the kids that finish college and get married buy houses in Florida, be close to the parents.
Okay,
I don't know how.
It's not like that.
but not as a 20-something single person.
Yeah.
No,
No, they're more like 30s.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they went somewhere else first and then
They might go somewhere else first, you know.
because we can say what we want to, but it's expensive to live here. I mean, did you look at the average house price here?
I can find-
Value? No, it's like 650 or something. That was a couple years ago. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It was a couple years ago. That was before the big crazy real estate thing.
It's fluctuating right now as we speak too.
Yeah, as we're sitting here.
Million. Yeah.
Really? The average or probably not the median though. Yeah, that might be. I mean, anybody who watches their house value.
But it's also more the ones that might come back and marry, or they marry, they get good jobs in Charlotte. They don't want to live in Charlotte. They want to live closer to their parents that have downsized and more.
To take care of their children.
Right.
Live-in babysitter. Well, to me, all that.
It is a little off topic, but you asked a question. I was curious.
Yeah.
For Zillow, the median price of housing right now, and it has ticked down slightly.
Yeah.
Is $1,025,000.
The median, you said the median.
Mhm.
Holy. Yeah, but still.
But it's, I mean,
You're
it's
right.
close enough.
You're right, because it's going to typically have more for sale on it. I mean, even though they say that there's Zillow Home Value Index represents all values, most of their data is coming from for sale stuff. So it's usually going to be a little bit inflated, but it's a pretty accurate, real time, as accurate as anything else.
Right.
I think my number was an average and it was several years old, so that would make sense.
And I'll look at the census later too, because the census is gonna be a little bit low. I mean, it's usually gonna be on the more conservative side. And then, Zillow's gonna be a little bit on the higher side, and then reality is somewhere in between, usually.
Do you have all the demographics for Marvin as far as the median income and everything?
Austin has shared a lot of that with us, and, so, yeah, we have all that.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. But before we get, I'm not even sure I remember the question, but I don't want us to get too far away from, this is my opinion, obviously, from the idea that we're like this little bubble of green and trees and nature and, okay, you can keep your horses. And that I don't want that to change. That was the reason I moved here, because I was able to find land that I could not find in Charlotte. And I didn't have to hear at the time traffic, and that was an option then. And I haven't been here but a couple of years, so it's not like it's changed that much. And it's this bubble of, you feel like you're living in a park, but you can be downtown in 25 minutes, 30, if the traffic's with you. And I mean downtown Charlotte, but I can definitely be eating and doing whatever else I do quickly from here. And I don't know where else you can live like that.
Yeah.
$1 million house or not.
So what if I'm just brainstorming here, but part of our identity was that we are that retreat, but we are close to all these other options.
Exactly.
Like, we don't have to have an
Exactly.
athletic complex or a restaurant, but you can go to Indian Land in Charlotte.
In
and-
10
and
minutes, you can
Waxhaw.
be
Valentine.
Yeah,
anywhere.
so you're like you're
In the middle of all.
a safe hub of a wheel,
I think that's a great.
with options around us, but we still protect who we are.
But also have like nice little community places to meet.
Yeah. We're still
And
a
that
place
could
where-
also include, food and beverage,
well,
but it's more of a
TBD.
quaint, yeah,
as we exist now.
yeah. But as far as now,
everybody that
yes,
moved
I
here.
agree. But not to be too sleepy. That's another thing.
I go back to that word oasis, and I thought that was a
Yeah.
very good description of this area.
Because that's what it sort of feels like if you drive outside of here. If you go toward Charlotte, you know what you get. But if you go toward unincorporated Union County, what you get is desolation. And I am the nature lover. Well, there's a couple of us, but it's just strip mined is what it looks like to put up a housing development, and we don't do that here. And that either this direction is not where I want to live. I like my bubble. It is a nice bubble.
I thought your
Oh, my
description was
bees.
great. Well, so we've had some really good answers here about our goals and outcomes, present that we're more welcoming, grow our volunteer base, connect to the people, that internal message, re-educate to people what Marvin is, talk about the bubble. I love that bubble, oasis,
Retreat.
nature, retreat. I love all that. I'll be interested to see. And as I mentioned, I have worked in Weddington, not on a branding project, but on branding and Indian Trail and Stallings, and all of those are in Union County. I think Stallings is in Union.
It's
Half and half. So I know some of the nuances of the places, and I can see some of the differences and some of the similarities in these communities. Wonder how they're presenting themselves too, I think will be important. That will be part of our process here, because the last thing we want to do is create something that Weddington's doing, for example. We have to make sure that we don't do that.
Just FYI, Weddington's is rural living redefined.
See,
Oh, that's fair.
put that down.
I checked that.
You get to keep your job, Austin. You know,
That is a good one.
down in Greenville,
They use that one
it's
in
called the Golden
Louisiana,
Triangle.
too.
It's Greenville, Asheville,
That
and
one's real
Hendersonville.
cool, 'cause
They
we are
co-market
so
themselves, or
close
used to.
that people don't think that's as welcoming. And I
So
like that.
the
front
porch thing.
And front porch, that's really, I don't know that we've ever used that as part of a tagline. We've definitely used it as part of a narrative before because goes back to like the thing I was telling you about Travelers Rest. They're not the place you pass through. These communities, they're the front porch. They're where you really kind of start enjoying your place. The front porch also really goes that next level to that welcoming character of the community. What's that?
Not Marvin, Charlotte's outdoor living space.
Yeah, exactly.
We have deer on our porch.
I have a question from a marketing perspective. Is using another city in your tagline, such as Charlotte's Rural Oasis, Charlotte's Outdoor Living, is it good to refer to another place for geolocation purposes, or is it bad for not promoting your own identity?
Sometimes.
It's a really good question.
Sometimes, I would say usually no, okay? But sometimes, we have definitely used words like the Southwest Virginia thing I showed before. The tagline there is the other side of Virginia.
And I love that brand.
And that's different because it's not a place, it's an entire, 30-something county region of a state. It's a quarter of the state. So it makes sense to use that in
And it is
situations
the
like
other
that.
side of Virginia.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot cooked into that too, about Virginia's history. And, people think about Virginia and Civil War and Revolutionary War and history and beautiful old, towns and villages. But the other side is outdoor recreation and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes that can be used. Sometimes we've done it in taglines. More often, we would do it in an ad concept.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's another thing too. When we do create a tagline, we try to create a tagline that has layers that we can build on with it. And you'll see a lot of sub taglines that'll come out in ad campaigns and stuff like that. So
I'm from a smaller area, so I'm used to always having to tell people, where am I actually from? Well, I don't know where that is. Where is that actually? And you have to geolocate with a big city.
You still could say like big city retreat or something like that and not say Charlotte, and just use, everybody knows what you're talking about. We mean Monroe.
So, let me ask a couple of other general questions. So there's the Marvin Heritage District, and that information's been shared to us, the brochure and the plan for what that could happen over there. We've seen all of that.
You had a very thorough driving tour.
Yeah, it's very thorough driving.
How long does that take? I'm just curious.
Lots, yeah.
Once we got to South Carolina, we had to turn around and come back.
Well,
So
yeah,
that
you're gonna do that a couple
That
times.
took 3 minutes.
It was about an hour and a half.
We did do an hour and a half tour of the
Must
entire
have been.
thing. So,
I mean, if you want to do the outline, that would take longer probably. I mean,
yeah, especially.
it's crazy.
Well, so there's.
How about
Marvin
something
Heritage
like
District.
this?
That's
How about
certainly-
the Marvin, your perfect outdoor living? Or something like that. I mean, we were both over here just kind of brainstorming, or, something that adds outdoor living within it. Because, I mean, outdoor living, if you think about it, that's what everybody likes to do. I mean, they have an outdoor living space.
That, to me, that's like going to the mountains and living outdoors.
Well, if they have an outdoor living space, when it comes to real estate, it means they have a really nice space in the backyard with fireplace, fire pit, pool, all kinds of stuff that they enjoy doing while they're at home, more so than they do sitting on the front porch. You don't see much sitting on the front porch around here. You see more outdoor living space that they built up in their backyard areas.
Is that what defines us? Is that what defines Marvin? Is people?
I think that
Having outdoor
Marvin
living?
is a area that enjoys their outdoor living spaces.
How do you know
But
what
so
everybody in
Charlotte,
Marvin?
Because I sell a lot of
Place?
properties and I go around to a lot of homes and I see
I
everything
don't
that
have a
they've got.
fireplace in my backyard.
Well, you're not one of the ones that live in some of the neighborhoods that are defined with those amenities.
But I live in a community that has horses and
You live in
Acre
you live in
parcels.
more of a compound, basically.
Yeah.
You know, what is this, the family? Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well,
But
I'll tell you
But that's a big thing around here. I mean,
That's what.
huge.
I'm hearing, here's what I'm hearing
The
too, that
Marvin
really kind
was.
of,
Is horse farm.
it's something that's gonna be part of our creative process is there's layering to everything that we're talking about right here. Whether it be that outdoor living and what we enjoy here, maybe even within our own properties versus that front porch. Certainly versus the greenery, the retreat area, that bubble, nature, trees, parks, or horses, even for those 12 horses that we still have
Oh,
here.
there's more than 12. He's got more than 12 in his
Yeah,
neighborhood.
you can take that out of the notes.
I probably do.
Really?
I do want to know how many there are.
Well, so the Heritage District is obviously a character district. Are there any other, you're a different place than other, say, Waxhaws that might have a traditional like a downtown or certainly a Charlotte that's a lot more urban and has different, it's got Fourth Ward and all that sort of stuff. Are there, other than Marvin Heritage Districts, and I'm not talking about neighborhoods here, but are there any other character districts that you see in this community? And the answer may be no, there's not.
Does the park count?
I think that the park is a major destination and probably one of the most important destinations in the
Best kept secret of Marvin, still.
Marvin used to be defined more so a lot whenever it changed with all of the, starting to grow as Firethorn, the golf course community. I mean, I lived up in Beverly Woods in Charlotte for 25 years, and that's how I got to be introduced to Marvin, was the Firethorn Country Club, basically. So it's a neighborhood, but it's a big neighborhood, and it's known throughout because of its nice golf course.
That's a good question. That's a good transition to my next question. A good comment. That's a good transition to my next question. A lot of times we think about themes to the story in the community. We talk a lot about rural character and the retreat and the outdoors and trees and all of that. You mentioned golf might be something that drew you here. We mentioned horses is one of the perceptions here in
Both of
the
which are on the
community.
seal.
Huh?
Both of which are on the current seal.
That's where I was going. But golf, your current seal, has golf, a horse, and 2 churches. Are those themes still relevant to the identity and character of the community? And the answer may be absolutely, Aaron. Religion, golf, and horses are, or they may be, no, we've evolved a little bit. A, are those still relevant? And B, are there other layers to our themes that in our character here in the community?
I would, since we're both on Marsh, I've got to throw that in there. I would like to believe that because we are a certified wildlife community, not just individual people's homes or yards or whatever, that is a difference since the seal was originally made. And that kind of precludes golf courses and horses. Can't speak to
Aaron, I think,
religion.
if you go back to the questionnaire, one of the top criteria, the things that people most like about Marvin is the trail system and the expansion of it. And I'm not saying that takes precedent over horses or churches, but it's something to consider because we are actively engaged in expanding the trail system. And it's a big piece of our community.
I don't think it'll ever be finalized.
Talking about the Marvin Loop.
Well, I'll be in my grave when it happens, but you'll see it. Yeah.
Keep saying it.
While we're on the topic of the seal, I know that, the seal will be our governmental logo. We're having this new community logo. Are you planning on, are you guys touching up the current seal at all? I don't know what's current agreement.
Let me ask y'all that, because the way that we treat seals, first of all, we take the guidance of our community. They say, don't touch it. They say, oh, you can tighten it up and make it cleaner. Or they say, we don't like this. Then that's what's happened in Zebulon. They're like, we really just need to redesign this whole thing. So the answer to your question is, I'll ask that back to you. What do y'all want us to do with the seal? Do y'all think it's something that's sacred that we don't want to change? Or would y'all like us to just take a crack at changing that seal? And if so, how do we do that? Do we just take the seal that's there right now and freshen it up? For example, the two churches that are on the seal don't look anything like the two churches that they're supposed to represent, as an example. That's an easy fix if we wanted to do that, to update it. Or it might be, you know what, we're not as much of a faith-based community, and that's probably a bad thing to say out loud, but maybe it's not as important anymore. And you may say, we don't want that. I don't know. So do y'all want us to change the seal? Do y'all want us to give us the creative license to redesign the seal? That's,
I don't need that on.
They want to hear you.
Okay, so Kim, the possibility, I know this is really way out there, of having historic district with a defining building, let's say a clock tower or something. Is that a possibility? Then maybe that would go on the seal. No, I'm sorry. Sorry.
You mean us building a historic one?
Is there going to be something like a clock tower or something that would kind of like be the centerpiece?
The most historic part of Marvin is the Marvin, or the Weddington Methodist Church used to be the Marvin Methodist Church.
Yeah.
It's the one that started Marvin. And Bishop Marvin.
Not that I know of.
The Bishop Marvin, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The bishop there who started that church was who Marvin was named after.
That's correct.
yeah.
The white church.
No,
So-
it's the small brick church, part of Wedding.
The red
United
brick.
Methodist. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But not active, not being used as a church.
No, now it's used.
It's a counseling center now, but they also use it for music venue and different things because
And Banks Presbyterian is part of the family.
That's the
It
white
is.
church.
That's the one.
But I was just pointing out that
No, I agree
Marvin
with you.
That where the Methodist Church was the beginning.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was just addressing his.
And I asked that question poorly earlier, and I was trying to ask it in a way that wasn't trying to be leading, because I absolutely don't have an opinion on it. But the question is we'd love to take a crack at that seal if y'all feel like it needs to be redesigned. So our question is do we or don't we have the creative license to take a crack at that seal?
I want to piggyback on that and just throw out an idea to the committee here. We've only been established since '94, right? We're young compared historically to people around us. And we've evolved and changed so much in that time frame. Like, do we want to try to define ourselves in a picture? Or do we leave that up to interpretation? Your idea of Marvin may be outdoor space, and her idea may be green and trees and animals, and mine may just be an oasis away from the city, but I'm close enough. And so we don't lock ourselves into a certain tagline that just says one of those things, or a certain seal design that says just one of those things. Like, we don't all play golf. We don't all ride horses. We don't all go to church.
Or
But
have a farm.
but can we brand ourselves with something, classy, that still kind of ties all that in? And I mean, look at like Valentine, it's just like the
It's just a
fancy
big-
beat.
Okay,
You
so it's
know?
like overall kind of generic.
Yeah, just a little more generic to not, try to have 5 people define what Marvin is when Marvin is constantly being evolved and redefined every day. I mean, because we're so young, we don't have a clock tower. We don't have
Yeah, we don't have
a
that.
well or an 800-year-old piece of train track or something, like.
But you can still say the Village of Marvin, you just wouldn't do M. Marvin.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I'm just saying, maybe we're a little more broad, but still elegant and classy. And I'm just throwing it out there
It's-
as a brainstorming.
And it's what
Really,
we're.
it's a good question.
Yeah, it's
really
a
is
very good question. And it's kind of what we're fighting against. I keep looking at your shirt because that's the closest logo the seal. That's what we're fighting against, that it's really clear what they're talking about there, right? And at least for me, that is not my version of Marvin at all, to your point.
Additionally, this is really expensive to get embroidered. I need something cheaper.
It is, but he could have the historic logo.
So I think the answer to your question is yes, take a stab at it.
Yeah.
And if we don't like it, we don't like it, but I say take a stab at it, and if we like
Can-
it, then we like it.
Can I make one quick suggestion?
Huh?
Would the committee favor the idea of having something brand new and then something refreshed at the same time, so we have 2 options to look at? So touch it up as one option and then take a stab at for a second option.
Okay, and let me, y'all keep talking for 1 second. I'm gonna pull up an example.
But also to your point, you showed it a couple of different times that you would have a town seal that was all very governmenty and who cares? And then the cool stuff that we put everywhere. And those are 2 completely different things because the seal is kind of
Yeah.
indicative of,
Yes.
yes, to all of our points.
Yeah.
Christina said indicative, and I agreed with that.
Gotcha.
Well, while Aaron's doing that, I do have a question.
What is Cedar Village?
They're something. They're a horse.
They're a horse.
They're
So
horse.
it is here. It is here.
Or
I wish we did more equestrian
But the
stuff
county,
here.
but the county school system gave those to us
Yeah, which-
because of the equestrian heritage.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Keep the horses. I'm okay with that.
But if it's like he's thinking, you want to make it more ambiguous.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. You want to make
we
it
can think
more,
about cleaning it
Yeah.
up.
make it more,
I mean, if
you
we're
know,
not-
like,
if we're
tree
not
lines.
diverse, If we need to be, more diverse, let's be more inclusive.
I always think about Marvin
No, I
sometimes
agree.
as the tree line street. If you ever remember, you've seen them before. If you've seen any images that I was just bringing it up, and that's always something that comes to my mind, tree line street.
We're back to my word, trees.
Traveled with all the traffic
Trees,
I have.
trees, trees.
Here's an example of some of what we may or may not be talking about. And this is Stallings, and this is what we did years ago. And the marketing logo and the tagline, how home should feel. That's that softer, more open-ended, more let people kind of, really make their own connection to the place, like you're talking about there. And a lot of times we work in growing, dynamic communities that are very different. And I would say you all are certainly different than your surroundings. A lot of times you end up with contemporary looking logos like that. I'm not saying that's what we would do here, but that could be a direction. But then their town seal, we completely redesigned it and included their only historic building that they have there in the community. Pardon?
Yeah,
Use the village.
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
The Village Hall would be
Well,
good
not for a
because
while.
one of the problems with the Stallings building there is it is very historic, but it's privately
It's a
owned.
privately owned business.
So if that becomes a business, a vape shop or something like that, you don't want that representing your community. So you have to be careful with your architecture as well.
Publix is not an option.
But I was just going to ask one other question too. Because I hear it a lot, and I'm not quite picking up on any one name convention of when people do talk about the Village of Marvin. do most people say Marvin? Do they say the village of Marvin? Like, I'm just curious as to like, if it's all over the place or.
When you hear village, what I've typically experienced is when people say village, they mean the government. Marvin
Okay.
is the community.
Oh, interesting.
That's what I've heard at least. What about you
I
guys?
think that's a good, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I don't disagree with you. I just say Marvin because I'm lazy.
What do you think, Kim?
That's harder to say than Marvin.
Every time I talk about Marvin, it's VOM. If I'm writing stuff, otherwise I just say the village.
Okay, the village.
But that's just, I mean, that's me. I think it's all over the place.
Nobody.
Because half the people don't realize that we're a village.
I'm
Some people
describing
think
where
we're
I
a
live to
city.
people. I say Marvin.
Yeah.
I never say village. of
Well, one of the
What do you
reasons,
say, Bob?
Marvin.
Marvin.
Yeah, I mean, if people say, where do you live? I say Marvin.
And then you go into the.
Oh, see, I say the village.
Because if I said the
I don't know.
village, people would go, huh?
Uh,
They wouldn't even know what I was talking.
And even saying the village of Marvin sounds kind of pretentious.
See, I
well,
say-
I mean, there may be an
Yeah.
option in the design that is just the village, just, you know, a popular, something you could put on like a t-shirt, but still ties back into the overall brand. So I just want to get a feel for it, because what I don't want to do is put something out there that's just the village and people not understand the context.
I
And
think
so,
if we weren't seen as pretentious and snobby before, that would fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you say that, Sean and I, and it's interesting to hear. Well, it's kind of all over the map. You know, when I
part of the-
I
that's why
never
you're-
even see village or whenever I'm, you know, shorthand, I might call it VOM, or when a lot of people connect it to the government, which makes a lot of sense. We were talking about that on the way in, and we couldn't answer the question ourselves, but it's funny because I mentioned to Sean, I'm like, you know, I don't know how important that is for the identity of the place. It may or may not be, we don't know. I'm like, but I can imagine if we were in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and we tried to suggest to them that they don't not call themselves the village of Pinehurst, that they'd run us out of town. Probably because of a little bit of what you just said too.
But they
So-
But nobody calls it the village.
nobody should.
Nobody from outside
No.
calls them village of
Pinehurst.
Pinehurst, not at all.
I didn't even know it was a village.
I didn't know
No,
it.
So village here, at least, it has a definition. I mean, I don't remember exactly what it is, but we have towns and cities and villages. There's no legal definition?
No, there is.
There's not in North Carolina. In cities,
Well, you
towns,
would
and
know.
villages have no legal difference. It's purely what do you put in your charter.
Seriously?
No, it's something about the municipal services.
It's not.
Important to our founders.
It is in other states. It is in Virginia, I believe.
Yeah, Virginia has towns and independent cities. And they're completely, I mean, you could be a city of something, but you're actually a town. Independent cities are basically county governments in and of themselves. If you live in that community, you're not in a county. You don't exist within the county, if that makes any sense. But
That's its own headache.
yeah, it
Fun
is.
fact, I used to live in the biggest town in the United States. And they just incorporated into a city because they got too big to call themselves a town anymore.
Who's that?
It's
Framingham, Massachusetts.
You know, we're going on an hour and a half.
Yeah, but they fed us, so we're good. No. And there's cookies. Yeah, there's plenty of food.
Hang on
a second.
What, we do have another one, at 2? Our next one's at 2, so we do have a little bit more time, but if y'all have to leave, I'm not gonna get offended, by the way, if anybody has to get up and leave. How would you describe, you know, when I showed that example of stylings, you could see two very different looks to that particular system. But these are, again, a handful of ones that we've done in North Carolina. And you can see things like Salisbury is very contemporary, is really focused on the arts. Clinton is kind of halfway between traditional, being that it's in their actual millstone, but also having multicolors. You've got Troy that has got a lot of downtown architecture, historic architecture. You've got Cherville.
Hey, I'm from that side of the state.
Which is kind of contemporary too. You have a lot of script we talked about the reason why we keep on bringing it. So my question,
What is the one that's green down at the bottom? Yeah.
that's actually a park logo for Pittsburgh parks. We didn't brand Pittsburgh, but we branded all the parks for them years ago. So I guess the question here is, how would you describe the personality of the character of Marvin as a place? Is it something that is very traditional, conservative? I'm not talking in terms of political. I'm just talking about character design. Is it traditional, or is our personality and character something that's more dynamic and contemporary?
I think wholesome. And I think it goes back to her comment about schools and the importance of school and family here.
One word that I would use, just from my experience working here, working with the council, the other staff, and working with the community, is ingenuitive. I rarely think of a time where we went with a boring solution to a problem. We always seem to strive for something either new or thought-provoking.
And that tells me that there's this dynamic nature here in this community.
But that doesn't mean growth necessarily.
Right.
Like
I
we
got
want to
you.
have a Starbucks on every corner, please, dear Lord, don't. Yeah. Like they can all blow up.
I think a lot of people who live here work in higher level jobs that they think they're good creative when it comes to some solutions. So I think that's very good. I like the person though, I thought that H with the lead, I just thought that was simple in itself. You just look at it and kind of know.
That one's actually one that's, in terms of the brands that we've done, one of the older ones that we've done. I'd say it's about 15 years old. And again, what we like to do is often, if we can, is create something that has that singular icon on it, which Henderson worked. Whereas the Troy one, which that was the right answer, the right brand for Troy, but it doesn't necessarily have that solid, simple icon that that Henderson was used.
Well, even the Clinton one, you've got that millstone that you can use here. Cherville, same way. You can use that C thing. Yeah, some of them have a more simple piece to them, but most of them don't.
I don't know why, like the one from Lake Lure, the typography is almost, I don't know, it seems, or the curves remind me of fishing lures. The one for Grand County, it looks like a postcard. Like, I think there's one different ways you could take this.
Your question was, how do we describe Marvin?
Yeah, and more, is it something that, how do you describe Marvin in a way that's going to lead us kind of down a path of creativity? Is it going to be more of a traditional type logo like you might see on the Styling Seal or the Troy logo or the Hertford one up in the upper right, or is there going to be something that's a little bit more contemporary like the Cherville or the Salisbury or the Clinton, what have you? I mean, what's the spectrum of the character of this place and how we may land on a design from something that's a bit more contemporary to something that's a bit more traditional?
Well, your definition you're assigning to your logos, I feel like is opposite to how I would define Marvin. Like we're a bedroom community. Traditionally, nobody works in Marvin. They all work outside of Marvin.
That's majority.
They come, they buy their $1 million home inside their gated community, and they
Get a horse?
get a horse and lock their doors at 5:00. This is their safe place to retreat, but it's very family oriented, right? Like, everything we do here is revolved around our schools and family events. We don't have after hour businesses or late night shenanigans going on. So I would say it's very conservative in that. Like, we don't have an eclectic artsy community. We have a very rich and talented artistic community, but we're not Asheville. So
Some of the words and some of the stuff that I keep hearing is $1 million house, gates, exclusivity. Why are we not leaning into that? It's what we are.
I
We're the
agree.
most affluent community in North Carolina. Like it's been written up, I don't know how many years. Why are we not leaning into that?
I agree wholeheartedly.
That's what we are.
And I'm the poorest resident in Marvin.
So, I mean, I say let's throw a dollar bill sign with the VOM, make that the new logo. I'm kidding about that,
Here's what
Christina.
it'll be.
But
It'll be a wrought iron gate with a dollar sign on the middle of it.
with a big old M on there. But I mean, like
and you can be
that,
classy.
absolutely.
And say this is a
People move to Marvin for the schools, for the homes, for the exclusivity of it. Not
Yeah.
everybody. I know Christina's
Safety.
smirking over there, but for the
safety,
majority of
quietness.
Marvin, I mean, I say lean into it.
Well, and I think that here, this is a good conversation, because one of the things about branding is we have to be true to who we are. You have to be. You can't tell a story that tries to project a place that is something that it's not. And there's a lot of places that do that, but by the same token, you want to make sure that however you're presenting that is done in a positive way, if that makes sense. And, as we're sitting here brainstorming, I think about the word rich, and obviously there's affluence, but one of the things, if we go back to everything that we've talked about before, you're rich in what are the best ways to put this? This is a rich community. This is a wealth community, but you're also rich with your outdoor resources and green resources. You're rich in nature. The character of the people are rich, and not necessarily what they have in their wallet, but the interactions that they have with their neighbors.
And we're trying to continue to enrich the community, like as a whole. So.
Kim, have y'all
Nailed it with the redefine.
Yeah.
Without, that didn't offend anyone. It actually made them feel that to redefine rural living, that they nailed it with the word redefine.
And they had other banners going down, and those bright blue banners, they're very eye-catching.
Yeah, it means we do it, so we do it in a different way.
has dropping the word village ever come up?
And I don't know that, and again, this is not my place to say, but I don't know that the village word is, to me, I don't see it as being a problem. And the reason why is it's definitely something that makes you unique, because there's no other town around you that the other thing is too, it conveys small. It probably does, it can convey rural too. And then also, just from a nuts and bolts standpoint, if at the very least, as Austin was mentioned earlier, it could be that piece that represents the functions of the government too, the village of. I'm not saying that that's what we have to do, but that could be part of it. We have worked in some places that really the answer to the story needs to be changing the town name, but you can't do that. So
You can, but it's hard.
yeah.
I feel like the word community keeps coming up a lot. Of all this, tag the park is a place in the community to gather. I heard up there, community together. Like us that are engaged in what's going on, like we have that sense of community. Whether it's just in Marble Creek or in ERG or council, like, so I keep gravitating to that word community. I wrote down community redefined, but then I kind of stretched it out. Which way it's
with their voices, simple living. Like, this is where I go from. This is where I go from.
these are good conversations, for sure.
Are we making this easier or more difficult?
Yeah, you're giving us.
Easy, we would have done it ourselves.
Some places are definitely harder than others. That's for sure. Um, Other places will come into the community and they may be in an extremely simple community with not a ton to offer, not in a negative way, but they just don't have much. That there's an easy direct answer that we get to within the first hour that we're working on the project. Yeah, we do. Well, and I will say this too. Some of the challenges come when we work in more affluent places that have and more engaged community. People that come to their council meetings and all of that, because college towns are really a challenge. Sean's actually worked the last 2 weeks in college towns. Those can be some of the toughest places for us to work because, everybody you meet is smarter than the last person that you just talked to. And everybody has an opinion. So, yeah, he was in Pullman, Washington, which is where Washington State is last week. And then we actually did Clemson the week before that, the city of Clemson. That's where I went.
Tigers and Cougars. I've worked with them both.
So I'm going to make a suggestion because I know you guys have your 2:00, right?
Staff's at 2.
Staff is at 2, and then you guys have community at 5.
We have boards at 3:30, property owners at 5,
Yeah.
and public input at 6:30.
6:30, and then tomorrow, yeah. So, and then this group gets back together Wednesday at 4.
To review.
So I would say this is probably a good spot to kind of break and everybody
I
kind of
agree.
collect your thoughts. And then, you've got full afternoon, right, still with staff, and then, yeah, and then we'll reconvene on Wednesday.
Our design wheels will be turning all day long as we talk to people. And when we see y'all next, we'll definitely have some things for y'all to react to from a graphic standpoint and a messaging standpoint.
So before we adjourn, board member comments. Anyone have any parting thoughts they'd like to share? Okay. Well, then I thank you everyone for a wonderful discussion. We will need a motion to adjourn at 1:37 p.m. All those in favor? Adjourned.
I really appreciate y'all's time today.
So are you two
So they can come back for as many sessions as they want. That's how we do it.
We've got board at 3:30.